to the FuturePrint Virtual Summit for our next session. I've got two gentlemen with me here that I've known for quite some time, and I know are ink experts with a specific interest and responsibility for Inkjet, and they're now on the same team as well. So that adds even more weight to this session because they come from slightly different backgrounds within the Inkjet sphere. This session is called The Amazing Power of Inkjet Inks. The reality is Inkjet inks are still the new kid on the block in many respects, still quite youthful, quite a young technology. And despite this, chemistry has evolved so quickly to be able for Inkjet to work in so many different markets. Have we now reached a point, gentlemen, where Inkjet inks are able to compete almost on an equal level with the old analog inks, or is that missing the point? So I'm going to introduce first Phil Jackman from Sun Chemical. You've been with Sun, I think, Phil, for 15 years, and more recently, obviously, with Sunjet and Inkjet inks and so on. Is that right?
Yeah, it's more than 20, but I'm not counting.
Oh, okay. Okay, more than 20. Fair enough.
And yeah, probably half of that's in the Inkjet world. So I've been around the printing inks business for quite some time.
Okay, brilliant. And Simon Daplin, previously Xenia Sensient and now Sun Chemical. So welcome.
Yeah, thank you. I'm kind of the new kid on the block in that respect.
You're the new kid on the block for the new kid ink on the block. Yes.
Exactly. There you go. I've been in Sun obviously since the acquisition of Sensient in July. So great to be part of the team. Fantastic.
So adds some really interesting additional products to the entire portfolio for Sun, which is exciting, I'm sure. So Inkjet Inks is working in lots of different marketplaces and so on, and the amazing power of Inkjet Inks. What's so amazing about Inkjet Inks, Phil?
It's not just the inks in general, but Inkjet as a whole technology. I mean, the inks need the hardware to work, and I think it's useful to look at the history of where they've come from to get us to where we are today. I'm sure Simon will agree. Inkjet's been around for decades. It started off, in small-scale environments or continuous inkjet single nozzles, and certainly you'll know it from your desktop printing where you've got an inkjet machine. It's pretty slow, it's pretty ponderous, but in industrial environments they've got faster, they've got wider and with better resolution. So it's getting to the point where if you want to build the machine, you can get them into a format that's acceptable in terms of widths, speed, and also quality to deliver an ink into almost any market. So the question really comes around the evolution of the chemistry in the ink to unlock those market potentials and enable the delivery of the inkjet solution now that the hardware has really matured and become available. And the inks as well are starting to come together so that you can embrace all the different market potential options that you have in front of you. And the options are vast.
Simon, so with your experience and obviously knowledge with inks, I know you've both got technical backgrounds as well, but I think you have that sort of experience in terms of developing inks and so on. Has it just got easier because the evolution of knowledge has reached a point where it's maturing and it's aligning more conveniently with engineering as well?
Yeah, in part. For sure, now the amount of materials that are suitable for inkjet has increased incredibly in terms of the quality, the purity, the kind of types of chemical that we can use. But inks also have had to evolve and adapt very quickly to meet the kind of performance specs of the systems, the machines. So before, where you could get away with maintenance cycles relatively frequently when we talk about industrial single pass systems, then the ink really has to work in tune with the machine on a production level because any downtime is money. So the chemistry and the hardware have to work in unison. And then if you look at the evolution of the market in terms of, say, UV, where you started with conventional UV with one type of ink, as soon as you move that to something like LED to increase the process or look at efficiencies in energy consumption and use there, the ink then had to evolve to match the new drying technologies. And we're seeing similar trends now in water-based where the speeds require drying at a different level. And so the chemistry, the drying system, the head, all those evolving at the same time to meet the requirements of the market.
Yeah, and it's I guess it's kind of getting that sweet spot for the technology where it works in in certain places it's not uniform yet. Is that fair to say? It's just you can't. You still need to develop customized solutions. Is that right? And ink's part of that.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately,
New
it'd be nice to
markets.
have an ink set that specifically addresses a market need, and that's always the goal. But you have to bear in mind that each application has a different need from the chemistry, okay, and the physics. So there's the drop formation and making sure whichever print head you're using at different drop sizes, the different kind of resolutions, speeds that they go, that the chemistry is working, forming the drops, that they're landing in the right places. But ultimately, once the ink's then on the substrate, the inkjet part is over, but the ink's lifetime is only just beginning in terms of what it then needs to do in the application. So all the regulatory things come into play, the safety and use, the color quality, the abrasion resistance, and all those things we have to factor in from a chemistry point of view to make sure the ink performs not only in the inkjet process, but in the lifetime of the end product.
So thank you. Phil, is ink often seen, particularly when developing new technologies in new marketplaces, a little bit of an afterthought as opposed to the hardware? And you get all this kind of clever, like you say, you've mentioned there, Simon, the heads. Then you get this kind of the kind of large metal, exciting looking engineering inventions, and then people go, we need an ink. Now let's get the ink guys in and they can help us with it, or hopefully they've even got one ready for us. Is that still an issue with the market, or?
And sometimes it's an expectation, because that's what people have grown up to know and love in the analog world, where very much independently presses and inks are not developed together. They just come together at the printer. In inkjet, it's far more complex than that. And certainly you need to sort of develop together to deliver a total robust solution. So to answer the question, sometimes ink is considered at the beginning, and an understanding of what the end specification and goals need to be, because a lot of the time the choice of chemistry will dictate the choice of hardware, the choice of printhead, etc. But you do get some scenarios like you mentioned where people almost assemble according to specification what they think is an ideal printing machine, and then say, have you got an ink that we can put in here to do this? And that's sometimes more challenging, because you may be already constrained by some of the physical properties of the print head, the print system, or something else they've tried to design around what they think is a blueprint for a great machine. So you get a bit of both. Ideally, ink should be considered certainly as early on in the project as possible, and definitely not as an afterthought.
Yeah, and I guess that leads on to the fact that collaboration is something that the market seems to have become better at, in terms of heads, software, machinery, and everything else right at the beginning, because it kind of means that you avoid sort of expensive issues later on, and I guess to some extent reduces risk of failure.
Yeah, from my side, as you kind of get into these more industrial projects, the collaboration is a fundamental part of it. Without each other, there is no end solution, right? So you can't really consider one aspect of inkjet in isolation. If the ink isn't there, or the print head doesn't work with the ink and the software, and even down to the substrate itself. I mean, the advances in the kind of materials we're printing onto to allow some of the chemistries we're printing through the head as well. I think without that collaborative approach that inkjet is adopting, then it will be a long time to market.
Yeah, because I guess the inkjet and inkjet inks, more specific, you have the knowledge of inkjet and inks, but these traditional manufacturing industries have the knowledge, deep knowledge, that just you can't acquire. You need to work together, don't you, in partnership? So it does make sense. So with that in mind, the amazing power of inkjet inks, have you any slides or anything you want to introduce at this point, Phil, just to sort of give us a little bit of a background around Sun and how you operate?
Yeah, I've got a few slides. I'll just share them now. It's not necessarily about introducing Sun, because I'd like to think that most people would know our background of being, the world's largest supplier of printing inks and pigments in the world. Just checking, can you see that? Okay, has that come through yet?
Yeah, I can see that.
It's not gone full screen now. Hold on. There we go. Yeah, so obviously we've touched on a few of the topics already, but wanted to sort of look at not having only the amazing power of the inkjet delivery systems that we've discussed, and printers are now available. I think it's important to also look at what chemistry is available. Certainly, having different options sometimes means that you're more able to meet those end use properties. For instance, if you've only got, if you're particularly hell bent on making an aqueous ink or a solvent ink, that may not be the best one for that particular application. So certainly within inkjet business at Sun Chemical, we've got probably one of the widest range of inkjet chemistries available. All the energy curable things, UV through to E-beam, etc., and the various markets they can address. Obviously lots of solvent and aqueous products, but also some of the more weird and wonderful things that aren't commonly used but are often very useful for solutions. Oil-based inks in coding and marking, hot melt ink, so a wax that you basically heat and jet at high temperatures that then solidifies, so it's a phase change process. It's quite different to a lot of the other inks that are commonly found. And then specialist industrial things for ceramics, ceramic tiles, etc., and glass inks. In electronics, we've got conductive inks and dielectrics that are used to make various electronic components and photovoltaic cells, etc. A range of edible inks we had historically as Sun Chemical, and obviously with the importation of the Sensient portfolio as well, even wider range of edible inks now, and then some sort of complementary primers and OPVs to help deliver some of these solutions to the market. And importantly is to work within our own inkjet laboratories to develop these things, but also to leverage into our global R&D teams that specialize in the conventional markets, particularly where Sun is big in packaging, industrial, etc. So we've got lots of laboratories globally to deal with local customers and local markets with all the local products, and then to sort of harvest that and build future-proof and future-looking inkjet solutions is pretty important. And because we don't sell hardware, because we're not linked to any printhead manufacturer, etc., we're very independent. So that gives us a very wide coverage and support of the printheads and the printhead market. So if a customer wants to work with one particular printhead over the other, we've already got the level of technology and support in our laboratory to help and work through some of those issues. So as well as having the widest portfolio of inks, we've probably got the widest portfolio of printhead support as well. So we're very nimble, very dynamic, and can deliver the best solutions in the best format to those customers.
Just to jump in there, I think Marcus, alluding to your question earlier about the need or the benefit of talking chemistry early in the process, it means that you're not defining a product from the outset, saying, right, I need this chemistry for this process. If we can have that dialogue and that collaboration, then having such a wide experience allows us to tune the chemistry specifically that's best for the application of the printhead. And that's kind of an advantage and a benefit of having that deep chemistry knowledge that we can kind of direct the route of development that makes the most sense for the final application.
Okay, so you'd have almost like, I guess, set formulas that you can then adapt and tweak within reason for specific applications.
Or it may be that someone has an idea to use a UV product and that's what they want to use, but after discussing with them, it looks better at using a solvent-based ink or an aqueous-based ink or vice versa, and that knowledge allows kind of that collaboration, and then you can talk about the print method and the drying and all of the process that goes around the print stage to make sure that it does the right thing for the customer in the application.
Okay, cool.
Good. So obviously we're a global business, but it's also important to recognise that Inkjet is a global business within Sun Chemical. We've got multiple sites around the world, either in sales, manufacturing and R&D. Most of it is done in the UK, where our sort of centre of excellence is for inkjet technologies. But of course, we've also recently acquired the site at Morges in Switzerland, the old Sensient site. And I think it's probably worthwhile to have a sort of short discussion on the background to that acquisition and what that means, not only to us as employees, but also our customers. And certainly the addition of extra technology and experts to our Sun Chemical digital team is very valued. Looking for future growth and commitment to not only the industry but our existing and future customers as well, with a wider toolbox of technology and having a larger team of experts to help support that. I mean, that's certainly what we bought into.
Yeah. So go on.
I was going to say, conversely, from someone coming in, I think from our side, the same kind of applies. The access to other chemistry experts to bounce ideas off. Obviously, we're now part of of a company that's very much focused on ink and inkjet in general, and that plays very heavily in our favor, enabled for our chemists to have those discussions, to share ideas and to advance some of the developments we've been working on. And of course, the power of scalability in terms of being able to manufacture potentially in different locations or have access to equipment and hardware that perhaps we didn't before really is going to reap a lot of benefit.
Yeah, good. So it's excitement on both sides, and I think our customers, whether mutual or independent, will be able to see the benefit of that in years to come. I know certainly behind the scenes, our technical guys and the level of interaction is really interesting and engaging. They're sharing lots of ideas and looking forward to move the technology forwards. So we're really pleased.
Yeah.
Good.
Okay.
So, yeah, as well as having a wide portfolio of different chemistries then, and being a big global company, being able to present this chemistry and those solutions to the various markets is important. I won't go through all the details, but certainly we have multiple brands to deal with the various chemistries and the various marketplaces, knowing full well that each market has its own requirements and its own language and its own properties to achieve. So we can address all of those directly with inkjet solutions to help customers, whether that's end users or OEMs going forwards. And obviously the new addition to this is the Xenia and Elvijet brands from Sensient for the digital textile inks that we're very pleased to add to our portfolio and look forward to growing that business.
Excellent.
And then I guess another part to this as well that makes sort of the Sun Chemical a very good and valued partner to work with is it's not just what we have in this digital world and bubble that we understand. It's also the way that inkjet is penetrating almost all print sectors globally, and it's all kind of coming together as one big jigsaw puzzle. Certainly the local markets are being served by Sun Chemical. And on the analog front, we'll have local laboratories. There's a liquid inks laboratory for packaging in almost every region in Europe, or in fact even the world, so they can deal with the local customers and the local problems. But then in more specialist areas, we've got centre of excellences as well. So things like metal decoration or tobacco printing or security printing, they're dealt as a global business, and we have centre of excellence to support that. And we're able to cross-platform develop, work out what they're doing today in their world, and how that would build into a digital solution to get the same level of requirements and performance properties of an inkjet solution versus the existing analog one. So it's really useful and practical to be part of a large inkjet company within a large analog company as well. So you can get the benefits of both, and really look forward to serving the customers going forwards.
Yeah, so that kind of key at the moment is sort of looking at the traditional markets. I guess you at Sun have seen where the markets are growing and where they haven't, because you've got obviously your ink in all of the places. I'd imagine there's a lot of interest in unlocking new markets. I mean, how's it work? Do you get kind of people coming to you and saying, we're looking to develop a new specific machine, we'd like to work with you because you can help us? Is that something you're actively looking for, those kind of partnerships going forward?
Yes, and it comes in at all levels. Certainly it comes at a new machine development phase, but more often than not, the existing Sun Chemical customers are printers or converters, and they will often have a desire to do something digitally, and will sometimes look to their ink provider first of all to see what's going on in their world. Or sometimes it will become as a larger project where they'll want to work with our ink and have sort of narrowed down or even specified the type of OEM machine that they're looking for. And then you get collaborative projects to help develop something a bit more specific to their needs. So it works from both ways. But certainly, in my sort of 8 or 9 years at Sunjet doing the inkjet business, I've noticed an exponential increase in the level of activity with our analog brothers within our group, and how they interact with us and their need to deliver some of our concepts and ideas to their customers, so we can start these projects from the beginning, really. I mean, Inkjet was pretty much in isolation 5 years ago. There were separate little markets, but it really is coming together now, and it is this global picture, and it is this sort of global collaborative aspect of trying to help existing customers digitize their world of print.
And Simon, obviously with Sensient, there's a lot of water-based and textile, to the additional products that are added into Sons and Mix. Are you now going to be working across different markets, or is your focus going to be on the expertise and the experience you already have?
A bit of both, I would say, Marcus. I think it's important that we maintain the relations we have with our customers, leverage the power of Sun behind the textile business where we were prevalent. But of course, we had a lot of inkjet water-based technology, and it wasn't only based in textile. We were developing behind the scenes in a number of application areas, and now that collaborative approach internally, allowing us to kind of work together with the project teams that were already established in Sun, hopefully allows us to innovate a bit faster and bring new solutions to the market from a chemistry point of view that can really drive the adoption of inkjet into some new areas.
And I mean, just as a sort of an opinion thing more than anything else, is the future water-based? Will everything become water-based? I know that a chemistry company probably can't predict that, but you're probably better than most. I mean, water is in demand, is it not?
Yeah, I think anything that is able to go to water-based will do. If there's a very strong technical reason not to, then it won't. But if it is possible to develop for and to deliver an inkjet solution that's based on aqueous chemistry, there's quite a few compelling reasons to do so.
Both on the packaging side as well as textiles, I suppose.
Yeah, for lots of reasons, health and safety, and ultimately price as well. I mean, water is cheap compared to some energy curable materials. 100% solid inks are expensive. They're very functional. They deliver lots. But where cost per square meter becomes increasingly important as machines get larger and the volumes they produce becomes higher, then the cost per square meter becomes more evident, and certainly having a lower cost ink potential point in the future is something that people are striving towards for sure.
I guess the health issues, I remember joining the industry in 2006, walking around shows and getting kind of really stingy eyes, and that was a real thing, and that was solvent, I guess. Is solvent sort of no more? It's still got a place for certain things, but ultimately is on its way out?
Yeah, I think it probably has a place, more of a niche than before. Certainly, customers that have been using solvent are more and more asking for water-based solutions to do a similar thing. I think the obvious thing that we have to contend with water when we're talking the chemistry side of things is the drying aspect of the
it's challenging.
a UV curing process is very rapid, and drying of a water-based ink can be challenging because it's always been that balance of drying on the substrate versus it drying in the head and needing maintenance and kind of upkeep of the print head. So that's really where the chemistry challenge lies now in water-based. So I think it will become a lot more prevalent in the market, and certainly people are asking for it. I think it's risky to just assume that because it's a water-based ink, it's safer or better in some aspects. It still has to be formulated, and the chemistry needs to be right for the application. A water-based ink doesn't automatically qualify to be food compatible, for example. So I think there's lots of kind of considerations still, but for sure the overriding kind of request that we get now water-based.
And so you're therefore in a good position. Yeah. So I guess penetrating all new print sectors, you've got that level of expertise that partners can benefit from, which is across lots of different industries, like you said here. And that analog legacy, that analog experience, both is a relationship one as well as a experience one, I assume. So it's sort of like you kind of already have these relationships with a lot of the large producers out there that use print.
Yes, of course. I mean, and pretty much wherever you see printing, you'll find Sun Chemical. I mean, we're in lots of markets and lots of customers. There's just a few splashed up on the screen now, of course. And interestingly, in all of those, they're either considering or starting to use inkjet to deliver their desire for digital printed whatever they're producing, corrugated or packaging, or whether it's a graphics solution or whatever. And wherever you also see printing, you're starting to find inkjet basically as well, almost without exception. They've either got it or considered it or trying it or something. There is in almost all areas of print, certainly because the run lengths are getting less and the the desirability to be able to produce flexibly on demand is omnipresent in the world of printing. So the desire to do something digital is there totally. So it's interesting to have that intro that in all areas of print, that we're currently present and currently active in developing the inkjet solutions for.
Mm.
So yeah, I guess, looking forwards as a digital future, I mean, it's nice to have all this history and this background and this, the technology portfolio. But certainly it's worthwhile looking into the digital future, what people are anticipating and expecting from, not just an ink company, but just from the markets in general as well, of course. And the world is changing. This is not a static environment. In the world of print, the run lengths are getting less. People are wanting to do things quicker and more nimbly, de-skilling, decentralizing print. It's all bringing the market into the hands of digital print, really. And at the same time, the inkjet equipment, as we've touched on, has got more available and better. It's faster, it's wider, it's better resolution. The whole ecosystem is evolving and it is generating a better technology year on year. And so the two things coming together really need ink and chemistry to unlock it. They want digital, the equipment's available, and what really makes it happen going forwards is the availability of a chemistry solution. Would you agree with that, Simon?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think the work done by the system manufacturers, the printhead guys, the integrators has really got us into a position where inkjet can be a production solution, right? And it's up to the chemistry then to deliver the application requirements in terms of what's needed in the final product. And if those things work in harmony, then inkjet has a huge potential. We already know that, but I think even on these industrial scale, as people reduce the reliance on huge runs of mass production and we get into a more customized zone, I think the potential is even bigger than perhaps we originally.
Yeah,
excellent.
Totally agree. And the next slide here we sort of touched on as well is about this sort of, it's not a static environment. It's not, we can't go and develop an ink for the next generation of printers that don't exist necessarily. It is, very much symbiotic. It does evolve together. It is an ecosystem. It involves, the materials of the converter, and that's changing as well, of course, with the recyclability influence on what people are printing onto and how they're delivering those packages. Their world is changing as well. So the whole thing is sort of growing together. So we need to develop inks that work for print heads that are different now to what they were 3 or 4 years ago. And the OEMs and where they integrate it and the software and the drive electronics. It's all kind of coming together, but it's not an independent development. It is sort of feeding off each other. It is an ecosystem, and it is continuing to thrive, continuing to grow, and continuing to evolve. It's really getting quite exciting.
Has demand changed in the past 6 months? Have you seen, I mean, obviously it has in terms of some traditional markets, but in terms of innovation, has that slowed or increased, or has it peaked in certain areas and reduced in others?
You're referencing COVID specifically, I'm assuming.
Yeah. I tried to without saying the word COVID.
The C word, okay. Yes, it's influenced things in various ways. Obviously, some markets would be influenced and the volumes of printing have gone down, but for the most part, some of them have gone up for packaging in the short term. There was a big spike, people panic buying. I'd like to think we'd reached a normalized position at some point. I think, generally the markets are down. But interestingly, and your question specifically was around sort of innovation. Yeah. I think it spurred things along with a lot of companies. Certainly our R&D team has been as busy as normal, and new projects are still coming through. Perhaps it's given people more time to sit back and think and plan for things when they were too busy doing other stuff while business was normal. I expect that sometimes people can actually step back a bit from what's happening in the old way of life and spend some time planning for the future. So I think generally printing is not as good as it was, but in terms of innovation, I've seen it not slow down, and perhaps the R&D level has actually increased, I'd suggest.
Do you say that, Simon?
Yeah, no, I think Phil's right in the fact that it's given people time to breathe, right? So maybe when you're reacting to customer needs in the market for existing products or working, obviously we saw a significant drop-off in that, especially in the springtime, and that gave people a chance to reflect. And I also think a lot of consumer and inquiries we get now are focused on people having time to think about sustainability and where they really see their place in the market, or where it's going. Certainly in the textile world, you saw a lot of data coming out where people were considering their purchasing choices and looking at more sustainable fashion or more sustainable ways of utilizing print. And I think that's one of the things that will drive innovation now, is thinking about new solutions, how we can respond to those trends that will come out.
Okay. And where are we on the slides?
Yeah, they're just coming up.
Okay.
Just look at the next one. Again, we touched on this slightly earlier on. I mean, the demands on print, and particularly ink, are significant. There's, the printer has a job to deliver a print quality, and then from there, there's the handover is the ink then takes it through the life cycle of that product. From cradle to grave almost. The ink must perform in the printer, of course, but then through subsequent post-print processes, whether that's in packaging as this example, being made into the packet and on the shelf and the consumer use, and then ultimately recycling. So the demands on that print and the demands on the ink are very significant. And slightly anecdotal here, but when you buy a printer, it's almost sold in sort of without referencing ink. It's sold on speed and resolution and all the things that make these cell sheets really interesting, and totally agnostic of ink and the performance of the ink sometimes. Yet the product, what's on the shelf and what the customer sees, they don't care how it's printed. They see the ink and the substrate. So for them, that's important. They're completely agnostic of how that was delivered to them. They don't care whether it's digital or analog or otherwise, but they'll be quick to moan if the ink comes off on their fingers or stains their worktop or something. So their little world is polar opposite from the way that the actual the hardware is sold and consumed in the world of print, where we love numbers, we love technology, we talk about it all the time. But the reality is the consumers don't care about that. They just want the product that works for them in their little world of opening their packets and doing what they want to do, or reading their newspapers, or putting their clothes on. Something that isn't fit for purpose and the ink isn't good enough, they're very quick to notice that.
Yeah, so it's a challenge. It's a challenge for chemistry and production to deliver against that. So you're getting your agility on the one hand, but your kind of durability on the other. So,
yes, of course. Yes. And then moving on again, it's important not only to recognize the value of ink in the printer, but also the whole thing that makes the solution possible. Understanding the regulatory demands of it, and in packaging, that's really, really important, of course, but also complementary coatings and how it all comes together as a solution. So certainly for packaging as an example, but it's not unique. Other things in industrial spaces will be the same. It's having an ink that works, but often working with a chemistry, supporting that through primers and overprint varnishes, and really integrating that as a chemistry solution, because this is what's required now to unlock these markets that are previously untapped or just starting to grow in the world of digital print. We can see that the hardware is available, the software is available, and where ink is available, these markets are already operating. The ones that are more challenging from a chemistry perspective are taking a while, but they're now coming through as well. So almost all areas of print are now able to be achieved with an inkjet as a solution to provide into those markets.
Brilliant.
And that concludes my slides.
Okay.
So I guess we could have a roundup conversation or something. I'll just stop sharing these if I can work it out.
That's okay.
Bear with me one second.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of that, then in summary, the Inkjet Ensign moved on along with the entire Inkjet kind of technology ecosystem to be able to meet the requirements of new markets and more difficult markets, production demands, and also I think a lot to do. It's got to be a lot to do with education and understanding as well, hasn't it? In terms of on the one hand, Inkjet becoming better at communicating and developing relationships, but on the other hand, the openness and desirability from the manufacturing world to want to try new tech. I'm also hearing from the market, various industries, that the openness to change has probably accelerated somewhat because of COVID, and that interest in digital or digitalization generally has gone through the roof. Is that are you hearing similar, or is it observing or seeing similar things? that inkjet's advantages are suddenly becoming a bit more fashionable and people more open to trying, or at least discussing the option of trying inkjet, whereas previously it might have been 5 years down the line. Now it's probably a year down the line.
Yeah, I think people want agility, don't they? They want to be able to print on demand, and that's what inkjet does. So it plays right into the wheelhouse of what inkjet is, and one of the major benefits. I think the reliance on stock or people are pretty scared now of holding mass levels of inventory to support markets, when if they have a solution that can enable them to very quickly produce on demand, then there's huge benefits, and maybe it removes some of the negative impact that some companies experience because of what we've seen in the last 6 months. So yeah, I think we'll see that trend
continue. Yeah, so?
Certainly. It hasn't really slowed anything down in terms of development or desire. That's for sure. The inkjet is the genie is out of the bottle. It's there. It's available. It's desirable to people. COVID hasn't slowed that down at all, and I think it's just continuing as business as usual to keep developing, keep growing, and keep trying to provide solutions to these new markets as they emerge. And it's not a static environment. The printers evolve, the inks evolve, everything supporting that structure evolves, as well as the customers' desires and the substrates and the markets they're working with as well. So it will just continue to grow and expand, and certainly anything that can be printed digitally ultimately will be.
Brilliant. On that note, then, I think we'll conclude. So thanks so much, guys, for this session, The Amazing Power of Inkjet Inks, with Phil Jackman and Simon Daplin, Sun Chemical. Their profiles are on the website. Please do connect with them, email, if you're interested in anything that's come out of this presentation. So thank you so much, guys, for being part of the Futureprint Virtual Summit.